A group of civic leaders, transportation experts, and community advocates are urging Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson to please help secure sustainable funding for public transit and build a faster and more reliable system across the region. A little trouble here. They have a transportation subcommittee set up, co-chaired by our old friend, RTA board chairman Kirk Dillard. There's a number of other people involved. A group of more than 30 experts from across all the industries and sectors. They have spent the last 2 months developing some policy recommendations for Mayor Brandon and his team, and it's called Transit is the Answer. It's RTA's strategic plan for the future. It's important. To discuss the same, let's welcome, I believe, for a first visit to this program, Leanne Redden. She's the executive director of the RTA. Leanne, thanks for your time. Appreciate your patience here. What are some of the specific goals that are in this plan?
Well, fundamentally, we are looking to increase funding for public transportation because we are facing a fiscal cliff in 2026. And if we want to maintain and support the transit system that we know it today and hopefully even improve and make it better, we are going to need additional monies.
So RTA's projected $730 million operating budget gap, is that in play this year or next year?
We anticipate reaching that deficit in 2026. So we've got a little bit of time, but we recognize that it's going to take some time and effort in our conversations, both with the public and the riders and elected officials, to really help everybody understand kind of what the challenges are and what's at stake.
The sustainable funding that is necessary, where does that come from? The feds, state, raising fares, cutting services, dealing with the new contracts? I mean, how are we going to reach this?
So fundamentally, we know that typically transit agencies only really have two levers in terms of their operating budgets, and that's sort of raising fares and cutting service. And we know, though, the nature of this kind of deficit that we're facing is it's not a viable option to do either of those two things, because what they do is create kind of this downward spiral where it drives further ridership away. Our system historically has really been too dependent on fare revenue, and with the pandemic and the impact it has had on transit ridership and fundamentally the way people are sort of living and working, we are not seeing that fare revenue that we had typically historically relied on. So as a result, we know we are going to need additional public funding to support the transit network. And that's why our conversations with elected officials and riders and the public at large are going to continue to sort of help people think through what those challenges are and how we might fix it.
But do you have to lean more on Springfield or more on D.C.?
So probably Springfield for sort of state and local monies. Historically, the federal government for big transit systems like ours doesn't really provide a lot of money on the operating side. Those monies typically come through on the capital side from the federal government. So it will be focused more at the local and the state level.
Plus, to get riders back post-pandemic, I know they're coming back slowly but surely, but still we have to ensure that the CTA in particular is safe. Are you involved in those discussions as far as putting more police, not only on the CTA, but on Metro as well?
So we know that safety and security across the entire transit system is an important factor and really something that everybody cares about. And we want to make sure that the transit system is safe for everybody who wants to ride. You mentioned the Mayor's transition report, and within there are recommendations around safety and security. And as our chairman, who served on that transition committee for the mayor, one of those key recommendations is to put together, for example, a safety security summit, recognizing that safety and security is not just about sort of policing. It's a bigger, complex issue, thinking about how do we address public safety across our transit network, from homelessness issue, from a mental health issue, from more of the traditional safety security side of things. We know it's going to have to be a multifaceted approach. We are excited that the mayor has incorporated that into his transition, and actually we will be working with them to try and advance all those efforts.
Talking here with Leanne Redden, she's the executive director of the RTA. So I understand when it comes to, you mentioned the homeless who utilize public transportation to spend a lot of time there, obviously. And I know that the mantra is treatment, not trauma, when you're dealing with responses to issues either on trains or buses. But in keeping with treatment, not trauma, that being said, I think I don't have the answer to this, but how do you remove unruly passengers when they don't want to get off?
Well, that's part of the complexity and the challenges, I think, in this whole conversation. And that's why we know that the transit operators aren't going to be the full part of the entirety of the solution. We have to bring kind of this multi-pronged, multifaceted, layered approach to addressing all of these issues. Transit is sometimes also sort of seen through the lens of what's happening in the broader region. And, I think that's the perspective we want to take and ensure that, we are taking a holistic approach.
I think a lot of pastors think, okay, it's good to have professionals involved because otherwise, we're told since 9/11, you see something, you say something, get involved. But that being said, we had a horrific event in national headlines out of New York recently that's yet to be settled. You don't know when you want to get involved in something that you see on public transportation. You put yourself at risk physically and maybe legally. I know it's expensive, but I think we're going to have to add more professional security folks to both trains and buses. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is a key component of the conversations, and how do we, with the mayor's office and others, collectively work to solve some of those problems. I think that is the challenge and the issues that we have to grapple with.
Leanne Redden, thanks for your time this afternoon. We'll check back in as this process continues.